Blitz Package, the podcast, Big County Preps, Preston Jackson. On the phone, Doug Pugh here to break down the rankings, baby. They're here, Sweet 16. Also our large and small class rankings, but it's time to drop the Sweet 16 now. Doug, say good morning to the fans.
Good morning. Here's Solo Marco Polo.
Now, you heard us earlier. We wanted to suspend the rankings because we want to get a larger sample size, see the teams more, do some more film study, better evaluations where we felt we could come back and give a quality ranking. And also, we know rankings, they're subjective as anything, and it's an opinion based. However, with the information we've gathered over the teams over the last 4 and 5 weeks, that we think that this is as good as they're going to get right now. And they're highly debatable, which is good. It makes for a good ranking because we'll still get input from these teams who will play better, and teams will move in and out the rankings. But before we start with the Sweet 16, Doug, let's touch on the Plant-Armwood game. Plant beats Armwood 29-27 in a thriller, one of the best TV games thus far in the 2016 season. Dane Franson had a big game for the Panthers, had some really big runs. You had a really good vantage point sitting in the studio over at Bright House. What were your observations for the Plant-Armwood game?
I thought it was a classic high school football game played against, by a couple of the best teams in our area. Now, both of those teams actually kind of showed, they kind of exposed, for lack of a better description, some weaknesses for each other. But we also got to see some strengths from each of the teams. I was pretty surprised to see McNeil and Snead playing, given the article, the reports of the injuries, and the nature of those injuries. But big time players make big time plays, and you want to show up, and you want to show that it's not, sometimes it's a little bit more than just how bad you're hurting physically. You want to play in games like this, and it was for bragging rights. I saw Plant able to move the ball. Franson's run was, I jumped up and disconnected. I broke the IFB. It came disconnected. I had to have our man Tim put me back together after Franson made that run. It reminded me of Tebow or Matt Stafford from week 1, where he just ran over dude and went straight to the end zone. I like playing special teams. It was a great high school football game. I think moving forward that both teams are probably going to win out in their districts, and then we'll see. Let the chips fall where they may. Armwood's probably got a little bit easier route until they eventually meet up with a team like Ocala Vanguard late in the playoffs. But Plant certainly has Lakeland or Winter Haven staring at them in the first and second round. And that's just kind of predicting ahead. But that's I think that both teams. We saw what we wanted to see. We got entertainment. We got a great battle where teams just refused to give up. Plant won the game. It wasn't Armwood losing the game. It was fun to watch, man.
Dane Franson had a good game, man. As you hit on 13 of 18 for 170 yards passing, and then rushing the football. Franson 17 carries for 172 yards. One TD ran, one TD thrown. He was really big. Walt Phillips had a really good game. Was all over the place on offense and defense. Juwan Burgess quietly had a solid performance. The USC commit, 2 receptions for 34 yards, but then had some key tackles towards the end of the game, Doug. I thought that Armwood had their opportunities, drop passes, fumbles, bad clock management at the half and end of the game, I think really hurt Armwood. It was one of those football games where you knew that you had to play as close to mistake-free as possible, and the mistakes that they had really kind of hit them over the head. Plant took advantage of some opportunities. Dane Franson had a really good game until that safety, and you could tell the momentum shifted. The momentum shifted all towards Armwood. At that point, I believe Armwood Plant was up by at least 2 scores.
Mm-hmm.
Armwood comes back. They get the safety. Not the safety. They get the touchdown. It would have been a safety, but it was a fumble, and they recovered the ball in the end zone.
Right, one of those "what are you doing" moments.
Right. So then they come back and they score again. They take the lead, and you can feel just the momentum shift in the stadium. But classic Plant style, they make a tremendous drive, uh, hold the ball for a while, kick the field goal, go up by 2 points, and then Armwood can't come back with a counter punch under a minute and a half, and it's ball game. So
I think, would you say it's a fair assessment, though? You mentioned how Armwood kind of hit themselves over the head, and I alluded to that. It wasn't a case of Armwood losing the game. It kind of sounds like we're on opposite sides, but I think we can agree that this hitting themselves over the head thing is nothing new. It's kind of like expecting Florida State to go down 2 touchdowns in the first half or the first quarter of a game now. You kind of like you kind of with Armwood, we know it's not a talent thing, so it's still one of those things where that game probably you could also say that Plant could have pulled away and Armwood battled back. So there's moments where you think that it's all coming together, and then you see why they need all the more as many reps as they can get for both teams.
Well, we both those teams are obviously in the rankings, Doug. And with that said, let's go ahead and transition into the rankings. Our rankings this year split in half, actually in thirds. However, we split up large class and small class. There's a separate top 10 for each. And then the culmination of both makes the Sweet 16 of the top 16 teams in our viewing area. If you're not familiar with Big County Preps in our viewing area, we are Hillsborough County, Pinellas County, Polk County. When you move up north, you have Pasco, Hernando County, and down south, Manatee County. So our 6-county viewing area, we have the top 10 teams in the large classes, which are 4A and above, small classes 3A and below, and then we put them all together and come up with the top 16 no matter what class, and that is the Sweet 16. So the teams who are in the ranking, congratulations, but don't get comfortable because they can change based on your wins, losses, and performances. So if you have an ugly win, that could hurt you. If you have an ugly loss, you're definitely going to move out the rankings. So, Doug, let's start with large classes, Doug. Top 10 large classes sitting at number 10. We're going to work our way down. Palmetto at 10. Lake Gibson at 9, East Lake at 8. Palmetto is 3-1, sitting 1-0 in the district. Lake Gibson undefeated right now, 4-0, Doug, sitting 1-0 in the district. East Lake also undefeated in both overall and in the district with that win over St. Pete. So, 10, 9, and 8 respectively. What do you like and do not like about those 3 teams, Doug?
Palmetto has they're actually 4-1. That one loss was a 7-3 loss to Manatee that was played on Labor Day, and then they had to turn around and come back that same week and beat Southeast. And they opened the season with an impressive win over Fort Myers at home. That was a team that we thought would lose a lot, in the form, especially with lose a guy like Jack Allison. But this team has really found a rhythm, and they're moving the ball well on offense. They're playing a great brand of defense. They've given up single digits in their last 4 games. They shut out Bayshore last week. I expect them to beat Lakewood Ranch and Northport and go in 6-1, 3-0 in the district. With the 2 weeks, there's kind of a round-robin deal going on in that district between Palmetto, Braden River, and Venice. I think that's 3 weeks of football from October 14th to October 28th. That is going to be can't-miss, must-see football when those 3 teams have to all play each other. So I think Palmetto's the season doesn't end very easy for them. Braden River, Venice, Charlotte, those are games that they can easily lose, but they can also end up 2-1, 1-2. They can steal a victory, and perhaps if they get the right victory, they could get into the playoffs in a district that is extremely top heavy. Lake Gibson, remember how we made such a big deal about them last year, and we expected them to kind of cruise through their schedule. I believe there's some addition by subtraction going on over there in the form of, now that some of the big names are gone, the national recruits are gone, they kind of maybe outgrew themselves. They were big fish in a small pond. That team was able to get back to business. And their last two games, 27-0, 47-0. They're going to beat Lake Region. I like them to beat Auburndale, Jenkins, Sebring, and Vanguard. That's a tough end to the season. But right now, Lake Gibson's looking at a very, very good season, potentially a one-loss regular season after starting the year 0-4 last year. So, they're back on track. It's good to see what's going on there. Now with Eastlake, to say that they have their hands full coming in they have the bye week. They obviously don't have their hands full with the bye week this week, but they're going to Ware County in Georgia on the 7th. To say they have their hands full is an understatement. So that could be a blemish on their record. But right now, the way they have put things together, especially again that statement win that they had over in Altamont Springs against Lake Brantley on the road, that gives me confidence that they can go through their district and quite frankly run through the rest of their schedule. The way I'm looking at it right now, I could easily see an 8-1 Eastlake team, which is kind of a departure from last year. But I'm not calling it right now. I'm just saying I can easily see that. But those teams, if that's 10-9 and 8, I can't wait to see what we've got going for the rest of the group.
10-9 and 8. Let's keep it moving. At 7, Lakeland 4-1, have not played a district game just yet. Armwood at 6, with that loss to Plant, they dropped. They're sitting at 3-1, 1-0. And at 5, Winter Haven out of Polk County, 3-1. They have not played a district game yet. Lakeland, the Carroll City loss kind of opened our eyes to Lakeland. We said, man, I hope they don't get thumped by Carroll City again. They need to prove they have better offensive power. They need to defend a little bit better. And they did not prove that to us. I think Armwood, we saw where they had their deficiencies. And that, piggybacking off the Manatee loss at the beginning of the season, dropped them down to number 6 because now we kind of see where the holes are on the Armwood team. Winter Haven, though they're 3-1 with the loss, obviously 3-1, they played a tough Osceola Cowboy team on the road, correct, Doug?
Correct, and I can guarantee you this, nobody is going to put 47 points on Osceola the rest of the season, at least in the regular season, and nobody is going to put total yardage on Osceola like Winter Haven did. Now, granted, you can't give up 56 if you're Winter Haven, but having seen that Osceola team every single week now, that's you can kind of throw that one to the side, and now it's game on with them hosting Lakeland on the 14th, and then they've got Kathleen to open up. Who is kind of a wounded team licking their wounds, but that's not a layup. You want to see, if you're Winter Haven, you want to see them step on the gas.
Right, and that's and we'll get to see the better team out of that Lakeland and Winter Haven matchup because they'll see each other on the 14th, as you stated. And I think Lakeland is a pretty good team, but we would like to see them play better against the better teams. So.
Correct.
They hammered Ed White out of Jacksonville. They hammered Auburndale. They hammered Fort Lauderdale. They hammered Haines City. However, those 4 teams aren't very good. And then when they get to Carroll City, who comes up, and Carroll City puts a thumping on them, 38-7, and makes you kind of pump your brakes a little bit. And you're like, well, is Lakeland only as good as their schedule, or are they good all the time? And I think that Carroll City game proved that they're not good all the time.
Well, keep in mind, the Bartow game this week is a game that they're in they're avenging a loss from last year. They lost to Bartow, and the Winter Haven game came down to them literally stopping Winter Haven on a 2-point conversion 6 inches from the goal line. Now they did what they had to do, but they're playing. They either, I guess it's a product of the schedule, and you know me, I've been hammering that schedule forever. And with the new playoff format that's been approved, we shall see what's happening. But Lakeland had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They had 8 home games.
Wow.
Okay. So this is that's what they're supposed to do at Bryant Stadium, right? And then when you only have one job, which was Carroll City, and you don't perform it very well, the criticism is justified. Now you got a chance to run this. They do. I'm not gonna count them out against Winter Haven whatsoever. I'm gonna expect them to beat Bartow. I'm gonna expect them to beat Jenkins. The Winter Haven game is a toss-up. I'm gonna expect them to beat Blanche Ely. I'm gonna expect them to beat Kathleen. So, I'm not calling for them to have some sort of falling out. I simply, you're just supposed to do what you're supposed to do. This is back in the old school days when Florida State was the only team in their conference, and if you didn't beat every team in the conference by 5 touchdowns, that was a moral victory for the other team.
Well, we got some. If that's 5, 6, and 7, that's pretty stiff for 5, 6, and 7. Those 3 teams, Winter Haven, Armwood, Lakeland, and of those 3 teams, Winter Haven, 214 points scored on the season, giving up just 86. Armwood gave up 29 to Plant, but on the season only giving up 45. And Lakeland, with the rough game against Carroll City, in total they've still only given up 41 points. So it's still a good showing by those teams. Now, Doug, let's move inside the top 5. At number 4, Braden River, 4-0, 1-0 in the district. 3, Plant, who just came off a good win against Armwood, 4-0, 1-0. And at 2, Tampa Bay Tech, who is 4-0, sitting pretty good in the district, 2-0. Doug, biggest surprise out of those 3 teams is who?
The biggest surprise is the fact that we can finally say they are who we thought they were, and I mean this in a great way, and that's Tampa Bay Tech. I don't mean this in the negative way that Denny Green said it. Man, TBT has I'm surprised and I'm thankfully surprised. Like, I'm welcoming this surprise. Braden River, we knew they were going to sort out what was going to, their schedule is very, 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 very manageable. We knew they were going to be undefeated at this point and clicking on all cylinders. That staff is one of the best. That district, it comes down to 2 games. So, really, we knew that Braden River was going to be their Plant. We figured Plant was going to be in the mix because of how well Coach Wiener liked his squad, how athletic they were, and he loved the moxie of that team. So, we knew they were going to be around. It's Tampa Bay Tech that has put it all together, and now it feels kind of like the sleeping giant, has woke up. And so here we are with Tampa Bay Tech no longer leaving things, kind of like, come on, Tech, let's go. We're not in one of those situations. And now here they are hosting Plant City, which we can now, even though that's a tough game, we can, you expect them to win that game, Preston.
Right.
At Armwood, you know how close that game was last year. And if Armwood plays the same game they played against Plant, that could end up in the same result they had against Plant. If you're playing a Tech team that's clicking on all cylinders. They host Leonard, which is a game you expect them to win. At Durant would be tricky, but you expect... Listen, it's not out of reason. This is not out of reason for a TBT to end up 9-0 this season. It's not out of reason. Now, Armwood, obviously, that's the 2-ton gorilla, and that game is going to be an all-out bloodbath. But, it's not without question. And everything from coaching to execution on the field by the players and everybody buying in makes this such a dangerous team on so many levels, man.
Yeah, I like Tech, man, and you said it right. I think everybody, even Tech inside their own locker room, every year Tech's the prettiest looking team. They have a bunch of athletes, top to bottom, and then they lose games where you feel they should not lose. They lose to a Newsom. They have a trouble with Plant City. They get dropped by Armwood. This year's team and staff feels a little bit different. It's like we got it and we're not going to fumble this year. We're not going to fumble the pelota this year. And I can see a classic game between Armwood and Tampa Bay Tech where either comes out victorious by a slim margin, but we're going to tell how good each team is when they play each other in a few weeks. Really like Braden River. We'll see them a little bit later trying to circle that Palmetto game. And Plant, we know that Plant can be a playoff contender, obviously, but I think they're gonna have to figure out that running back situation. I don't like that Dane Franson was their leading quarterback, rusher, and he was a quarterback, and he had so many touches at that position. So I think they're gonna have to figure out what they want to do at the running back position. I would like to see Watt Filia back there some more, give him a few touches as a running back, and let him kind of merge into being their leading candidate to take handoffs. So, number one team in the area of the large classes. What do you like about Jesuit, Doug Pugh?
I like everything about Jesuit. I like their ability to run the ball, I like their ability to set up their passing game via the run. I like their athleticism on the back end on defense. Their front seven is always solid. Matt Thompson understands how to put together a game plan, him and his staff, I should say. It's not just Coach Thompson, but, this is, for my money, they're the number 2 team in all Class 5A. American Heritage Plantation has earned the right to be number 1. But I would say that, Jesuit is the number 1 team in our area. If you look at, you start to play that game, what if, head to head. We play this as one of our favorite games off the air. Jesuit versus TBT, hell of a game. Would love to see that one. Jesuit versus Plant, hell of a game. Like, you could see Jesuit in and beating all of the teams behind them. But at the same time, here's what I'm going to say, and this is not just trying to hype the poll. The top 6, especially the top 6, you could easily make the case that, that's a 4-quarter game. I want to see what happens with that game. Jesuit versus TBT, Jesuit versus Plant, Jesuit versus Braden River versus Winter Haven versus Armwood. Those are all games that, potential matchups that you could see and say, yeah. So if Jesuit is clicking on all cylinders, for me, pound for pound, that team is number 1. But it's not like some sort of runaway. This is a very hard poll. This would be a poll that you could put together that could actually, make up a specific class statewide in terms of pedigree right now.
Man, let me just throw some numbers out at you real quick, Doug, and to our listeners. Jesuit has scored 202 points this year, has only allowed 26 points. And that 26 points comes to 2 opponents. They got 2 shutouts so far this season, Doug, with points coming.
23 of those 26 come courtesy of one team.
One team. 23 of those 26 come courtesy of Jefferson, and they gave up 3 in the first game of the season at Lakewood Ranch. They blanked Lato, which they should have. They blanked Pasco, which they should have. And they've only allowed 26 points while scoring 202 of those things. Tampa Bay Tech's only allowed 26 points. Plant's only allowed 48 points. Braden Rivers only allowed 28 points, Doug. If we drop down to Lake Gibson, who sits at number 9, they've only allowed 22 points on the season. So within our top 10, Doug, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 of the top 10 have allowed fewer than 50 points in 5 or less games.
Hey, defense, it's fun to watch. It's fun to watch people score points, but, not allowing points is pretty much the name of the game. defense will win you championships.
Let's go to our small classes, Doug. Let's shoot through 10 through 5. Small classes. That is class 3A and below. Zephyr Hills Christian comes in at number 10. They're 3-1, 0-1 in the 0-1, right, Doug, in the conference?
Yeah, in their little coral orange conference, they're in with Bishop McLaughlin, Santa Fe Catholic, Seven Rivers Christian out of Lecanto.
All right. Bishop McLaughlin comes in at 9. Just mentioned them. They come in at number 9, 3-1, 1-0 in the conference. Sefner Christian 4-0 with a battle coming up against Cambridge. Sefner's Christian is 4-0, 1-0 in the district. Northside Christian 3-1, have not played a district game yet. And number 6 is Berkeley Prep, sitting at 2-1, and they have not played a district game yet. So, Doug, out of those 5 teams, which one can you see moving up, possibly even next week? As soon as next week?
As soon as next week. Well, if they can pull off what I guess would be considered an upset, if they can beat Tampa Catholic this week, they're certainly going in there, and that's Berkeley Prep. Sitting at 2-1, the Victory Christian game, week 2 game, would have been probably the best sample that we could have gotten from them, other than the CCC game, which that 44-27 scoreline really didn't, to me, represent the whole story. I thought Berkeley played well. They moved the ball. That just the offense was clicking for CCC that night. But then you see that they have the ability to shut down. Cardinal Mooney has put up some points on other teams and only managed 7 against the Bucks. Farragut got shut out last week, so it's not a layup for TC. So if I had to pick one, it would probably be Berkeley. But Bishop they're at Seven Rivers, which is Christian, which is not a layup. Really, the only team, Northside would beat. They are sitting at 7, but they're playing a team that we expect to beat, and that's Carrollwood Day. And Sefner, if Sefner beats Cambridge, that's the no-brainer. That's the one that goes into the top 5. But in all reality, the most likely candidate right now for me would be Berkeley.
I'm looking at Northside's Christian schedule right now. They'll host Carrollwood Day, host Bell Creek Academy, host Indian Rocks Christian before they have to travel to Jordan Christian Prep. So Northside Christian's schedule is definitely favorable. We'll see what kind of Sefner Christian team that we'll get this week. They haven't played teams they're up to their caliber just yet, but Cambridge, who we like a whole lot, they're a very complete team with Richard and the running back, and so we'll see what kind of game we'll get. Both undefeated, 5-0 Cambridge, 4-0 Sefner. I like the bottom 5. Admiral Farragut surprisingly not in there, but we don't necessarily know what Admiral Farragut is. So they have a few weeks to prove their point, and they can punch their way into this top 10. But the bottom 5 definitely stiff. Let's move up to the top 5, Doug. Victory sit at 5. Victory Christian at 4-0. Cambridge Christian at number 4, sitting undefeated at 5-0. CCC at number 3, 4-1. Tampa Catholic with the win over CCC propels them to number 2. And Lakeland Christian, the top dog in the small class, they are 5-0. None of the top 5 have played a district game. The obvious question, Doug, to you is, how is Tampa Catholic, sitting at 1-2, 1 win, 2 losses, the number 2 small class team in the area?
Well, I don't particularly know, to be honest with you. No, I'm just kidding. It speaks to how we feel about them when they go out and play a game like they did last week. Fort Pierce Central is one of the best teams in all of Class 8A. Keep in mind, Devin Barrett ran for almost 150 yards against that defense. You go on the road to Bergen Catholic. You haven't played a game You didn't play the first game until September 10th. And then, you don't get you get Austin Sessoms banged up a little bit. He comes back, and now Tampa Catholic is who we thought they were, just kind of like Tampa Bay Tech was. So, that schedule sets up very well for them. Land O'Lakes, they should win. West Oaks, they should demolish. Gibbs, they should win. And then it gets interesting because Lakeland Christian and Jesuit are the meat and potatoes of their schedule. Those are what's left, I should say, because Fort Pierce Central, CCC, and Bergen Catholic, that's a man-sized way to begin your schedule, to begin your year. So it says that Tampa Catholic, hitting on all cylinders, is a very, very dangerous team, and we should see them start to run off some games here. 1, 2, 3, 4. They should get to 5-2 and 1-0 in the district if they handle their business this week against Berkeley Prep. And it should, what looked like it could have been a disaster to start the season is going to end up looking very nice, and it's a hell of a job by Coach Mike Gregory and his staff.
What if Cambridge would have played Tampa Catholic? Cambridge with all the talent, Aaron Pierre, Richard Garage, all that talent that Cambridge has coming off state championship run. What happened if Andrew Cunningham and the boys played Devin Barrett and the boys at Tampa Catholic, Doug?
I think you'd see one very close, very similar to what we saw with CCC last week. I don't think you'd see either one of. I don't think it's a blowout. I don't think it's a gimme game for either team by any stretch. I think they're pretty much on when they're both as equal, when they're both on the same footing, on the same ground, and all healthy. They're very, very similar teams to me. Athletic at the skill positions. They've got guys that can play both ways in the trenches. They've got quarterbacks that both do what they're asked to do within their own schemes, their respective schemes. So I think it would be another great game like what we saw last week.
I like it, man. I like Cambridge. I like them a lot, actually. They may end up being our game of the week versus Sefner Christian. Want to see those guys play again. I think that Tampa Catholic is going to end up being the team we thought they could be. Here's a team that not a lot of people talk about, and that's Victory Christian. Tommy Lewis and what he's done since he became the head coach is nothing less than phenomenal. Because they're a small school, they don't get the press, they don't get the recognitions which they deserve. I'm gonna throw another one at you: a Wayne Peace coach Lakeland Christian team versus a Tommy Lewis coach Victory Christian team. Who ends up winning that bloodbath?
That would actually be like asking me to choose between one of my animals, man.
Right. I feel you.
I don't know if I want to answer that.
I feel you.
To be quite honest with you, because of how I feel about both coaches and the jobs they've done. I think that one would come down to boiling down, who's your quarterback? Tate Watley versus Dalton Jenner.
And you got a good battle there.
So, I think if you ask me who I would want, I don't really know. I think that Lakeland Christian team is a great team. I think they've earned that number one spot. I think Victory Christian, if they wanted to feel like they had a beef at being at 5, I wouldn't be against them feeling that way, Preston.
Yeah.
At all, to be honest with you. So I think that we're headed for the right deal. Now, what's interesting is Lakeland Christian, I'm looking at their schedule, and that's a 4A win down on the road at Bishop Verreau. That Trinity Prep team has given up a lot of points. First Baptist is a good team out of that 2A class out of Naples. You beat a Frostproof team that is not of what is, of years past, but it's still a solid team. Now they go at Land O'Lakes this week, which is a game they should win. Melbourne Central Catholic now comes to them on the 7th. That's undefeated Melbourne Central Catholic team that is mowing down people, and it's a team that a few of these teams around this area for playoff purposes should probably scout when they come to Lakeland on the 7th. So Lakeland Christian, we get to see really, truly what Lakeland Christian is about from October 7th to October 27th. They've got Melbourne Central Catholic at Berkeley Prep. They've got the bye week, and then they host Tampa Catholic, which is going to determine postseason fate for both teams. Or at that point, it could be determining district order for either team, depending on what happens with Berkeley Prep. So LCS, they set up well. Victory sets up well. CCC is a team that we need to make mention of because they should rebound nicely this week against St. Pete Catholic, and you can confirm this. You knew that I was a little apprehensive about that defense giving up 27 to Berkeley, 21 to Indian Rocks, 18 to Clearwater Academy. I was a little skeptical about that. I wasn't worried about that offense. And quite frankly, here's the deal. When you score 21 points, come playoff time, 21 points, you better be able to win the ball game, right?
Right.
So, to me, the offense did their job again this week. If I'm looking and treating CCC as a high-caliber playoff team. They'll be at St. Pete Catholic this week. They're at Ocala Trinity Catholic, a game they should win. They'll host Calvary Christian in the district, at Farragut, at Cardinal Mooney, games that they should win. They should win. Quite frankly, they should win out. This should be the wake-up call. And I expect CCC to go to march right on. But again, the points have to be reduced somehow, some way from that defense.
That is your top 10 small class. We gave you the top 10 in the large classes. We gave you the top 10 in the small classes. Doug, let's move on to the Sweet 16, which is the big boy. All classes combined, put them all in a hat. And no matter how big of a school you are, no matter how many students you have a chance to be in the Sweet 16. And here go the 16 teams we feel are the finest in the land. Well, in our little coverage area. Here we go. At 1, Jesuit, followed up by Tampa Tech. 3 is Plant. 4 is Braden River. Winter Haven follows them up at 5. Armwood at 6. Lakeland at 7. Eastlake at 8. Number 9 team in the land is Lake Gibson. And the top 10 rounds off with Palmetto. At 11, Doug, we come in with the Durant Cougars. What do you like about the Cougars sitting at the number 11 spot?
I like that they have stepped on the gas since since sputtering out the gate against Hillsborough in week 1. They left nothing to question against Spoto. Tough rivalry win against Newsom. At East Bay, they blew them out and blew Leonard out last week, 44-0. They're at Bloomingdale, which is a tricky game, but a game they should be favored to win. Strawberry Crest, so they should be, realistically, they should be 6-1, 4-0 in the district, and then, it's time to meet the maker. It's time to stand and fight because it's October 14th at Plant City, October 21st home to Tampa Bay Tech, and there's your postseason fate in those 2 weeks right there.
Yeah, you just mentioned Plant City, and they'll come in number 12 spot, and you said it's going to get real for Plant City because they're going to see you on the 30th coming up. They got Tampa Bay Tech, Bloomingdale, and then Durant, so those next 3 weeks are going to be big for Plant City, just as they will Durant. So Plant City comes in at your number 12 spot, Doug, and we're going to keep moving right along. St. Pete at 13, they dropped one against Eastlake, but they are a pretty good team. Austin Causey and the boys played well, just not enough to muster up in that 17-7 loss against Eastlake. Now, here's one with a question mark, Doug, but let's talk through this. At number 14, we've got Manatee at 2-2. At the start of the season, they were basically our number 1 team. How did they drop all the way down to number 14 in the land?
I think Giving up 78 points is hard to digest. To come back and win a game 7-3, which was hard fought. You played on Labor Day, and then to go and play that game at Venice and get beat 42-7. I think what we've got, and then you come back and beat Alonzo 44-0, and then you're on the bye. I believe that in so many ways, that's kind of a Jekyll and Hyde personality to me right now. So what I'll say is this: I expect Manatee to win out. I expect them to beat Steinbrenner. I expect them to beat Palm Harbor. I expect them to beat Sarasota Riverview, although that might be a sneaky tough game. At Riverview, at Newsom, at Southeast. I expect Manatee to finish 8-2, 7-3 at absolute worst case scenario. So, having them at 14 right now, I would say, Manatee, you're merely just renting space right now in this section of the Sweet 16. Handle your business, and you will find yourself back up on the upper floors where you belong. It's hard to digest that kind of start to the season, to be honest.
Yeah, they've given up 123 points already in the season. Scored 114. Just tough that we know we really like this team. We really think this team is good, but it's tough to swallow. They've given up so many points to anybody. I don't care if they were playing the Bucks; they shouldn't give up 78 points.
No, not really.
All right, let's keep moving on, Doug. Spoke on Manatee. Sitting behind Manatee is Lakeland Christian. We talked about them. We really like what Lakeland Christian can do. Feel like they're the 15th best team in the land. And to round off the Sweet 16, we're looking at the Sickles Griffins at 3-1. Doug, talk to me about Sickles.
Well, let's talk about them because Sickles, there they are. One of the most consistent. Can we just go ahead and call them what they are? They're one of the most consistent programs we've had, and I don't know if it's quietly or not. I'm going to call it quietly because it feels like they've played a lot of big games, and it feels like we've talked about them, but I don't think we've put them in that upper echelon. Go back, for all you guys that are listening to this, go back and look on that team history page and go back and look at the last 10 years of Sickles. And the way, or even a smaller sample size, go back and look at the last 5-6 years that they put together. You're gonna see what kind of pedigree this team and this program has had, and now to win a close one on the road, a game that, let's face it, a healthy Wiregrass is a pain in the ass for a lot of people, whether they win or lose. So to win that game, that's a quality win on the road in overtime. That was a tough loss to Jefferson. That Tampa Bay Tech game could have told us a lot about Sickles. But the Gaither win is a good win. I don't care who you are, especially in this district where wins are going to come at premium. Although it appears now that the smoke is starting to clear, they've gotten past their toughest opponent, should we say, for that, that their toughest obstacles. For the runner-up spot, because Plant hasn't they've lost one game in the last 11 years in district.
Right.
Let's not kid ourselves. So if you're playing for second place in that district, however, with the Lee Corso number 2 pencil, not so fast. They host Plant on the 7th. So throw your hat out there and let's see what happens. But after that it's Wharton and they've got Lato this week. And then they've got the Plant game, as we just mentioned, and then Wharton and Freedom left. So Sickles is, again, in the driver's seat to get that runner-up spot, or at least a postseason spot. I hate to call them runners-up because of how consistent they've been, and like I said, their record is quite impressive. The past few years, it's pretty amazing the kind of consistency we've gotten from them.
They should have a big week against Lato coming up, and then they are home against Plant, and then home again against Wharton, and then they travel to Freedom. So the next 3 out of 4 games should be pretty challenging for Sickles, and we'll find out what kind of team we have with the Griffins. Now, Doug, just a few teams on the outside looking in. What are some teams, a few teams that you're keeping your eye on that either could have possibly made this ranking or have a chance within the next few weeks to prove their point? I'll touch on a few. Definitely keep my eye on Pinellas Park, and then keep my eye on Clearwater. I think both of those teams have a chance to move into the rankings, depending on how they perform over the next couple weeks. But I think those could be the next two teams in if things kind of shake up. What's your take?
I think so as well. I'm going to give you, however, I'm going to give you one really outside the box one, okay? Because you got to pay attention to what they're getting ready to do. You kind of have to hear me out on this one. One, it's Ridge Community. They're sitting at 3-1, 1-0 in the district. Last year, the closest game that Kissimmee Osceola played in district last year was against Ridge, a 2-win Ridge team. So, all things being equal, Ridge, if you do something that hasn't been done in a long time, and beat Osceola, you go 4-1 with Lake Region, Mount Dora, Kissimmee, Gateway, Haines City, and Auburndale left on your schedule. You might be looking at biggest turnaround of the year. And we're talking about teams that are just on the peripheral, right? So. I think you hit two good ones with Clearwater and Pinellas Park. I'm going to see those, and Ridge Community is a team that has intrigued me to no end because of how they're doing with the way they've handled and bounced back. I think a team to keep your eye on as well is Northeast to break into that 16. There's also Nature Coast that's lurking up there that has put a hurting on some people as well. So and of course we've still got Mitchell and Sun Lake, that we expect to continue to do. Although Mitchell's loss to Springstead really hurt them, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of parity right now in that back end. I think our top 10. Right now, especially with the big classes, I think our top 10 is pretty solid. I think the 11 through 16, any one of those teams could find themselves on the way out if they stumble along. But do your job, and nobody's getting in if those teams do their job that's ahead of them.
Well, hope you enjoyed the podcast. I hope we enlightened you, informed you on what our opinions are. We think it's a really good start to the season for some teams. You're hitting your mid-season stride. A lot can shake up. There are a lot of good teams out there in the top 10, and each one of those rankings are stiff, and the Sweet 16 is a doozy. So for Doug Pugh, Preston Jackson, Big County Preps, we're out.